Welcome to Independent Thought and Freedom, Episode 8. Erica Williams-Connell has embarked on a mission to keep alive and extend the legacy of her father, the world-famous historian of slavery, imperialism, and the Caribbean, and the first Prime Minister of independent Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Eric Williams. The Eric Williams Memorial Collection, which she heads, is included in UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. But, as with any great political figure, Dr. Eric Williams and his legacy is not without controversy by any means. Was his continuous 30-year reign in power dictatorial in any way? What was his record of race, religious and ethnic relations between the Africans, Indians, whites, Chinese, and others? And he faced serious rebellions from the radical trade unionists, black power activists, and others right from the 1960s up to his passing. Erica Williams-Connell tells the fascinating story of growing up as a young child during these tumultuous years, after the death of her mother, leaving her father to care for her alone. Her experience of the Army Mutiny, the Black Power Revolution, and independence, where her father sometimes was hero and sometimes villain, are explored among other things. If you missed last week's episode, please make sure that you listen to it first. There are some real gems there. This is an exciting, lively discussion that you don't want to miss. We rejoin the second half of the conversation in progress. You don't like the attention. It's always been my impression, and I believe it's widely believed that your father really gave you a lot of attention and love. But I suppose it would be very limited because he's such a public figure.
No, he certainly always did. There's no question. I said I don't like the attention from people.
Right.
And certainly, he would not have had as much attention to spend with me if he had not been leading a country.
Yes.
If he'd just been an ordinary businessman going to work, coming home, he would spend a lot more time. But I had, many surrogates, not fathers, but I had 3 surrogate mothers. I had a large family, so It was all right. But you told me that I shun attention. I shun politics.
Right.
I have discovered in my old age, I do no longer shun politics.
Right.
At all. I am not in politics, but let me tell you, I am more involved in politics in this country here where I live than I could never have believed it. And I think all the time, I think to myself, what the hell would Eric Williams have said? He would have said, well, you couldn't escape it. Mm-hmm. I am 68 to be 68 years old. Never been in a demonstration in my entire life. Last year saw me in 2 demonstrations, not 1, but 2. I've never been.
But
writing letters. I've written to the president, written to the Speaker of the House, Bobblehead Ryan, written to I call the congressmen, representatives. I call the senators. I tell them about Bill number HR 1541. I'm telling you, it is. I have like a piece of paper with a column. One column is House of Representatives. The other column is the senators. Mm-hmm. I have never been more involved in my entire life. I've gone canvassing 2 big apartment buildings. It's not the first time. I've been phone banking, canvassing this last time for the midterms. So I'm involved in politics.
So now,
here I am.
Now, when you were young, and the country was going through some tumultuous moments with independence, the Black Power movement, when your father, had the 1973 resignation, up to his death in office in 1981, did he try to explain these events to you? Did you all talk about it at all, or did he kind of close you off from those things? What was it like?
Not at all. In 1970, I was about 19.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Switzerland at the time learning advanced French, and I knew that the state of emergency was going to happen before it happened, because he had said, we'd had like from February to April of all these marches, and he did these demonstrations. He did not want to make martyrs of anybody, but after a while, it had to stop. So I knew about that.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I came home within 2 days.
What did he tell you about the Black Power movement? Because for
Well,
people who don't know, I'd like to set the stage. So here's your father, author of Capitalism and Slavery, an anti-colonial intellectual, stood up to the British, so forth. But by 1970, 8 years after independence, the young people, many of whose parents were PNM members, part of the party your father led, were saying that your father was neo-colonial, that he did not push the country sufficiently into an independent existence, and that he was essentially leading a neo-colonial regime, which I think would have been, it's ironic and maybe,
in other words, a white man's black man or a house slave, right?
Yes, that's so.
Yeah.
Were those types of issues breached or talked about at all?
Well, my father wrote me at least 4 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
I was always away. So I have all these letters, hundreds of letters, and I don't remember what they all say, for sure. I'm now trying to they're all closed to research because I don't know what they say. Right. I'm now trying to kind of read them over to see, what should be redacted, what should not be, what could be opened, what could not be. What he understood the young people's positions. Right. He understood that things were moving too slowly for them. But that is a common factor. Yes. Of every age. The young always are impatient with the older ones. The young always feel, my daughter thinks I'm in the dinosaur, my granddaughter, in the dinosaur age.
Right.
She does. She thinks when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I was alive.
That's right.
That is normal. Mm-hmm. So it is quite normal for all of these young, mostly black men to chafe against the pace of change. Right. Now, Eric Williams was a pragmatist. He had to rule the entire country. Whites, blacks, Chinese, Syrians, Indians, everybody. There's no way that you could have gone too far, too fast. Mm-hmm. That's not the way responsible people do things. But he understood, and that's why they wrote the People's Charter. He understood what the young people that they chafed against this. He understood that there were still many injustices in the society. He got that. But at the same time, if you recall, that 1970 was a confluence of, first of all, the Black Power that was uprisings in the United States, which we always do such a good job of copying everything. But
that was Stokely Carmichael who coined the phrase a Trinidadian when he. Yeah. So it's very interesting.
We always copy things, we still do from the United. Anything that is a part of the West Indian society, yes. And it still is today. That's right. Anything from the metropolitan countries is good, and what we have is not, or not as good.
Yes.
In those days, with him, it wasn't good at all. So there was the adoption. Yeah, I mean, Mahalia Jackson came to Trinidad and said she didn't understand what was going on. You have a black government.
Yes.
Okay. So, but it was the adoption of the Black Power uprising. And of course, you can't transplant one set of situations from the United States to Trinidad.
Exactly.
But they tried. So there was that. There was the political aspect where disaffected people tried to take advantage of that situation, the constant demonstrations. And then there were the trade unions, which also decided to take advantage of that. And then there was the army, the regiment, that decided
that to mutiny.
Yeah. Right. So there were 4 things going on at the same time. Mm-hmm. Now, 2 political, 1 military, so to speak, and 1, the young people, and people are always trying to take up. I mean, what happened in Trinidad and Tobago with the Black Power uprising was no different than the Women's March all over the world the day after Trump's inauguration. We didn't have social media then. Right. But the point is, you didn't just have a Women's March in America. You had all over the world.
You had student movements all over the place.
Correct. Yes. So they tend to morph one into the other. They tend to, people see a cause and then they tend to adopt it as their own.
But was it a discussion point you had with your father, especially since you
No.
were 19, a lot
Mm.
of your friends would have been into these things, I'm supposing.
No, none of my friends were into that.
Okay.
First of all,
But
I
people
had
you
been
knew,
away. No, I had been
no?
away. I had been away from the age of 11.
Okay, but not in Trinidad. But what I mean is, in Europe, like Paris 1968 was a big thing, right? I mean, surely in Switzerland, um, no?
I didn't know anybody who was involved in any of that sort of thing.
Okay,
I
okay.
never did.
All right.
So it really was not a discussion
All
as
right.
such. It was, him telling me what was going on and so on.
And here's another similar thing. When he resigned in 1973, it was I
Well, he
think that's
said he was going to resign, right?
yes, and I mean he made
And
definite
that was
moves.
through my urging.
Really, because
Yes.
he did mention it in the speech.
Yeah.
That's correct. He did mention. That's right. Now that I remember the speech, I
Mhm.
would love to. Does the Eric Williams Memorial Collection have a copy of that speech?
Maybe. I don't know.
I definitely want a full copy of it. I read it with like Paul Sutton's copy of it, but I didn't photocopy it, which I really should have done. But I
So let
certainly.
me ask you something. I know this is apropos of nothing. Why don't you are such you work with Paul Sutton a lot. You did a lot of the research of Eric Williams. Why don't you republish Forged from the Love of Liberty?
I think that would be an excellent thing to do. I think
I mean, it's out of print for years. That's a
I
collection of his speeches.
I
Years.
I think it's the most important thing that anybody in politics should read in Trinidad and Tobago, because as I said at the beginning, your father thought of every single issue, um, that still faces our country today, and he addressed it fundamentally and deeply. So even if you don't agree with his answers, you still need to go through those very same questions.
To see what you don't agree with.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and because he laid out the problems, quite clearly, and everybody needs to grapple with the issues that he raised. And
I know I'm not supposed to be doing this in the interview, but I'm challenging you to get it republished.
well, I definitely will. I haven't been in touch with Paul for a long time, and I need to reconnect. But that is definitely something that I think needs to be done. Absolutely needs to be done.
Yeah. Well, we have the actual volume, so
Okay.
Yeah. I have a volume I could send to you.
Well, excellent. I
So we talk about.
I have a copy of the book that
Oh, you do?
that I
Okay.
had bought used, but those are only excerpts of the speech. But I want the full speech, which I've read before, but I didn't make a copy for myself. That 1970
The full speech of
of his resignation, because
no. I understand that, but I'm
yeah.
talking about the speeches in Forged. But we can talk about that
Yes,
after.
yes.
Yeah.
But with the resignation, why I think that's such an important piece is because he as he normally is, it's a sweeping view. He goes, right back, from before he was in politics to when he entered, and all the things he met in 56, and it's still there in 73, right? And he would go over in everything from the character of the politicians, to the attitude of the people in the country, to the economy, to the business people, to all. And he was just so frustrated with everything in that speech. It's quite a damning but very honest, brutally honest speech. And I don't, did he talk to you? Well,
Well, I'm the one who was pushing him.
Right. So did you dictate a lot of that to him?
No. I didn't.
Yes. No, I'm being facetious, but I mean, but certainly he would have been feeling those things as well. So what prompted you then to push him towards that resignation?
He was tired.
Right.
I felt he was tired. I felt he was not getting any kind of substantive recognition for all that he had done for the country.
Right.
I felt there were a lot of ingrates in the society,
Mm-hmm.
and You don't have to, as I said, as we have said before, you don't have to agree with everything somebody does to understand that they have made an enormous contribution to the country.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I want to, you know, talk up the contribution he's made to Trinidad and Tobago, because the Trinidad and Tobago of now is certainly not the Trinidad and Tobago of 30-something years ago.
Yeah. I mean,
But
that,
regardless,
yes.
you cannot possibly state that he did not make a yeoman's contribution to Trinidad and Tobago. So I felt that there were a lot of ingrates. I felt he was tired. I felt that he could have time for himself. He could write his books. I just wanted him out.
And he agreed.
And of course,
he
then
obviously agreed.
Not only that, the thing in my mind, you have to remember that the regiment wanted to string my father up in Woodford Square. They wanted to hang him in Woodford Square in 1970.
Yeah.
There's no daughter who would want their father to be involved in, you know, to be in the same position, to have the same thing happen again. I'm the one who was 19 years old, slept with a 38 caliber special under my pillow in his bedroom, with my glasses on for the first 2 nights when I arrived. Because if I have somebody burst into the room, I have to be able to see to shoot them.
Wow. That was what year? That was in 1970 itself?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, so you had come back because you were in Switzerland, you said.
Well, the state of emergency was April 21st, and I think I was back like by the 23rd or the 24th.
Okay.
And I came. That was another thing. I came back when everybody was leaving.
Right.
And he and I had a big argument about that. That night of April 21st, he said, and I said, I'm coming back. He said, the cabinet has decided that you're not to come back. I said, well, you could tell the cabinet to stuff it. I'm coming. I did. Mm-hmm. I did. I said, tell the cabinet to stuff it. I'm coming. So he then realized that he had to. I said, if you don't make arrangements for me to come, I will swim there if I have to. So you better make arrangements because I'm coming. I don't give a damn what the cabinet says. And so he knew that I was serious. I said, I'm coming. I said, the only way you could not have me come is tell the Swiss they'll have to arrest me and put me in jail. Otherwise, I'm coming. So he then made arrangements for me to come back.
And your motivation to come was to protect your father, was it?
Absolutely. What was it? Yes, to protect him.
Yeah.
And if he was going down, we were going together. Wow. Of course.
And I mean, you talk about a 38 caliber pistol under your pillow. Did you have I
don't know training? How the police gave me that. I had no training. Okay. I could have shot my damn head off. I had no idea. The only good thing about it is that no woman can actually pull the trigger of a 38. It's so hard. You have to cock the action first, and then you could go click. But you couldn't do it any other way. So it would have to be rather deliberative. But yeah, eventually, after I got it under my pillow for a long time, they then took me to the range to have me learn how to do it, to train me. But before that, I mean, this was no time for training.
Yeah.
They had people sleeping on our stairs in front of his room to stop anybody from breaking in.
Wow. Now, to get to a memory of a different time with your father, as an intellectual myself, I think I think the highlight period must be around 1961, 60, when CLR James and your father and Naipaul were close. Your father had invited V.S. Naipaul to write on the Caribbean, and that launched.
The Middle Passage is the result.
That's right. That brilliant book, and that launched Naipaul as a travel writer and a writer of non-fiction. It was your.
Well,
father.
I wouldn't say exactly a travel writer. That's.
Yes. I mean, well, Naipaul's brand of travel writing.
Right.
Yeah, and at the time, James was with the PNM and the West Indian Federal Labor Party, and he had written Beyond the Boundary. And I know James and Naipaul were corresponding, and obviously Naipaul and your father were corresponding, and the government of Trinidad and Tobago under your father sponsored Naipaul's travels and so forth, and Naipaul acknowledges that and is as thankful to your father.
Yes, he did.
do you remember any of that at all?
No.
No, you weren't part of because that would be 60. So you would have been about maybe 10 years older, so 10 or 11. So
Yes.
you never met them during that period.
Well, I knew CLR James, yes, but I
Okay.
don't recall ever meeting
Lydia
Nightfall. But certainly I knew CLR James well. Yeah.
Right, right. Okay. Well, I know we've been at this a while, but I do want to ask you some kind of more reflective questions as well. Like if you had to do this thing over in terms of setting up the memorial collection and so forth, is there anything that you would change?
Nothing.
Good. Right.
Nothing. Nothing at all. It has been, it has been the most incredible experience of my life. When Alma Jordan, who was the campus librarian at the time,
right.
I think she was campus librarian of the whole university system, or maybe that came later. When she approached me about putting his books and papers with UWI, I was very hesitant because of Black Power and the role that the UWI professors, many of them, had in it.
Absolutely.
Very, very, very antipathetic to that idea.
Yes.
Knowing Alma, she was very good at persuading me, and eventually I did. I always knew what I wanted to establish, which was something akin to a presidential library, which is showing, not only a museum, a research facility, the library and archives, but also showing the highs and lows of that particular administration, the successes and failures. I always knew I wanted to do that. In fact, when I was about 14 and my father and I would talk, he would talk about his, when he died and his will and all that. I always said to him, at a time when I was really only interested in boys, I always said to him, the only thing I want from you is your books and papers. I always said that to him. And I have no idea why at 14 or 15, I'm not even sure. I was a mediocre student. I failed my exams, really mediocre. I didn't go to university. I had no idea at the time what I would do with them or with it.
But you obviously knew instinctively that your father was his books and papers.
But not only that, I knew what was valuable.
That's right.
Many years later, when I was in my 20s, he would always tell me, you should write a book. I have no idea why he said that. Maybe it was because of the letters that I wrote to him. I'm a very good writer. And there's been no training. That's just a gift. I'm an excellent writer. My friends used to tell me, don't write any letters because you make us cry. Don't write any letters.
But I want to ask you about when Alma Jordan
I'm coming to that. So
convinced you. What did she say to?
I have no idea what she said. I don't know what she said.
Okay, so you can't recall what the tipping point was.
I can't.
But she overcame your objections.
Oh yes, she did. She did.
Yeah. How did she overcome that?
I don't remember.
What made you comfortable all of a sudden?
I don't know. I'm not sure it was comfortable. Sure. It was. I was not comfortable.
Right.
I was not comfortable for a long time. And so this was like about 81. He died in March. So I want to say 81. And the library had approached me and I was kind of tossing both up. And anyway, whatever it was not that Alma was offering anything less or more than the library. It must have been Alma's herself.
Right.
And I'm still close with her.
And it's interesting that, this was done in 1998 when it was over.
No. It was, 1981, let's say, late 1981 is when I gave it over. And it took them from 81 till, I don't know. Yeah, they had this stuff all the time. They didn't have
it since 81, since your father died.
The books and papers. They didn't have the memorabilia. They didn't have the museum pieces.
Okay.
And then in 1996 or so, we had the UWI, Harvard University and Collegium for African American Research Conference on Eric Williams at UWI. And then they were building the new wing of the library, building it over, whatever. And finally, in let's say about 1996, 1997, I get to Trinidad and they then librarian Margaret Rouse Jones and says, Erica, you have to come. I want you to see our new premises. It is fabulous. So I get there. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I
yeah,
get,
continue.
So I get there. It took them a long time to, collate and whatever it is they were doing. So I get there and I see this room, which now is our archives room, with lots of metal shelving units and the books and the papers all there. And I said, that's it? She said, well, yeah, those are the books and papers. I said, but Margaret, that can't be. Right. I said, when you open this thing, people in Trinidad are going to strips. Yes. They're going to say, you take this from since 81, let's say 82 or whatever it is, and now we're 96. And this is it? I said, how does this relate to the average man? This is for scholars. I said, yes, and I agree. It's an academic, undertaking. But you have to show something. Eric Williams was more than a scholar to Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. You have to show something. She said, well, we have no room. I said, well, yeah, but listen, if you move that partition over there, and you see you have these pillars, and partition that, and do that, and that's how the EWMC came into being. And we ended up with a small museum, the archives and library and archives, a reading room that we share with West Indiana, special collections at UWI. And that's how we always shared the reading room. I'm not sure. Yeah, we always shared the reading room. So it was to take room from the library and archives and a room that was adjacent to it, even 2 rooms that were adjacent, and make that all into a museum.
Yeah.
And they did it. And I don't know how we did it. I have no idea. But we opened it. 4 o'clock in the morning, we were still polishing silver and shining, polishing ivory and stuff like that. And we opened in 1998 for Colin Powell.
Yes.
That was another way. That was another thing of how we got Colin Powell.
Yeah, and also it was done during the administration of Bastille Pandey.
Yes.
So, through another party. I mean, the PNM, the party your father founded, had been in government for most of Trinidad's history.
Correct.
It's still in power now, right now, as we speak. Mm-hmm. And I always found it ironic and strange that the library was opened actually when the PNM was not in power.
Well, I think
is there anything there?
Yes, yes, of course there is.
Right.
And in fact, when we invited the then leader of the PNM to the opening, he refused. He didn't come.
That's correct.
Yeah,
he wasn't. It was the pictures, and I remember
he did not come.
Happened. That's right.
He did not come.
That is.
And Pandey, I think. First of all, Pandey is a very charming individual.
Yes.
Very charming. Always very respectful of me. Very, very charming. And he'd have been an idiot not to open it.
Yes.
Because it's showing that you are magnanimous, you have a world view, you recognize it's perhaps pulling over some of the PNMites who were, said that Williams was not well treated by sort of ignoring him. It might move them over to your side. He doesn't have to be an idiot, and he's not an idiot.
And he knew your father, and he respected your father,
although him. Absolutely, absolutely. Again, reasonable people can have reasonable policy differences. Mm-hmm. Basdio Pandey respected Eric Williams.
Yes.
So there was no question. It was an extremely important moment in that it was real. It was not manufactured. One leader was jealous, the next one was respectful and admiring, and
yes.
willing to be involved.
Well,
it's a national undertaking.
Well, this comes down to a question about legacy then, because now, so the party that your father founded, the leader of that party was not there at the opening.
Nope.
And I have to say this too, and his children are not in the country, right? And
What does it have to do with his children? I don't understand.
No, I'm just and I want to tie it to the resignation speech too, because in the resignation speech there is a profound sense of frustration and failure. And he says so, he wanted to do this, he wanted to do that, he wanted to do this, and the attitude of the people and the structures and and all this
Not
thing.
only that, and the economics of the situation.
Yes.
And that's why he changed his mind with the 1973 oil crisis.
Yes.
As he said, it is an ill wind that blows somebody some good.
Right.
Meaning Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, benefited from the huge increase in the price of oil. Yes.
And he saw that he could do something, and he also told me one night he was lying in bed and I was sitting on his bed, and I was asking him to please leave. And he said these exact words: I have to tie up the money for the children. I have to make it so that it cannot be touched. And if you look at after he died, when he died, where there were monies in different
special funds for long-term
special
development.
Funds, exactly.
That's what it was,
you will see what he tried to do. Yes.
Yeah, I know, and it was all blown by 1983, 2 years after your father died.
Well, we had a big recession, and
but it was
but at least we had it to blow it.
Yes, no, exactly. But it was after your father died. It was after your father died.
Oh, I don't know enough about that to speak about.
I've studied it. Believe me, that's when it happened. That's when it happened.
No, I know it happened, but I don't know enough about why it happened to say. But there was a recession.
There was a recession.
But, and obviously when you have a recession, you can't say, well, I'm going to keep that money for a rainy day. This is a rainy day.
Yeah. But I mean, when your father decided to not go through with the resignation, how did you feel?
I don't know. Probably disappointed. Probably I didn't think he was ever going to do it anyway. I don't know. It's hard for politicians to give up power,
That's right. Yeah. And the life, that's right.
And but I would say with him it was definitely more than just power. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yes.
There's no question about it in my mind.
There's a mission. He had a mission.
He did. He had a mission. It was more than power, and he saw what he could do.
Now, I'll tell you, now, in my view, and let me put this to you here. I think it might be a good place to do it. I've said this publicly, and Selwyn Cudjoe has, berated me for saying it, but I really believe that your father died added
Oh, absolutely.
Disappointed in the country, disappointed in the party, disappointed all around. And
he was a completely disappointed man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
he was disappointed, he was disillusioned. And again, for the same reasons that, the quote that I gave to you about the West Indian tradition and, the anti-intellectualism and so on. And I think that, many people who have very, very lofty goals, they end up disillusioned because, especially if you're running a country, you have to bring those people along. And while you could bring some along, you're not going to bring all.
That's right.
So you're destined to disappointment.
Right.
Destined for disappointment.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't think there was any other way it could have gone.
Wow, that's a very important statement.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it again. I bring it back to your own kids. You want your kids, you're an intellectual, you want your kids to grow up and go to college and so on. And I always wonder whether, you want more for your kids. You want better, you want them to go to university and all that, and then they don't go, like me.
Mm-hmm.
And they disappoint you to a certain extent. But I found out later, I always had that bit of guilt. He never showed me that he was disappointed. He never did.
Right.
In fact, I would always say to him, what would you have wanted me to be if I'd gone to university? And he never told me. He died and he would not tell me, because he did not want me to feel, I think, that I was a failure, which I do not.
Yeah.
Everybody has strengths.
Yes.
You know, and that is what I've learned by having a child, is that there are different forms of intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
book sense don't make common sense, you know,
Exactly.
at all.
Exactly.
So what I'm trying to say is, and then I found out later, Margaret Rouse Jones was writing, campus librarian at UWI, was
Yes.
former, was writing, she was doing a lecture, and she was doing this study. She was doing some research in EW's inward hunger drafts. He has many drafts handwritten.
Okay.
Things that did not make it into the actual book.
Wow.
And this is what he wrote of my mother. She had the love of his life, who died at 28. She had a native intelligence uncorrupted by a university education. And bingo, bam, that made me understand. That's why he wasn't disappointed.
That's right.
Because he knew I had a native intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I decided not to go to university, it didn't bother him.
That's right. I tell people, you know, my grandmother, she didn't go to school after 8 years old. And yet I say that she's more intelligent than most of the PhDs I know.
Well, the same thing I can tell you. We had a helper in our house, a maid in our house. Her name was Inez Caesar. She was the main of the 3 surrogate mothers I had. She came when I was 4. Her sister was with me when my mother died. Her sister was with us for 2 years. Then the sister died. So Inez came at 4. Inez didn't go past primary school. She was the one who kissed my knees, wiped my butt. You know, when I stole some little girl's purse at school, she said, I'm not going to tell your father, you have to go and return it. This woman could not be closer to me, she's dead now, than if she was my blood.
Mm-hmm.
She had more intelligence in her little toe than many of the academics who feel they have the whole alphabet after their name.
Exactly.
Name. Book sense don't make common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Period. That's it.
Now, another question about your task with the Eric Williams Memorial Collection. Is there anything you find daunting or fearful about doing it?
No, and that was something I wanted to also express, which I didn't. There's no way I could have done so much with the collection, realized all of my dreams and ambitions for it, were it not for UWI.
Right.
And the staff there over the years. Remember, this has been since 81, 82.
Right.
We're now in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I have gone through different principals. I've gone through different campus librarians, heads of West Indiana, which is where we fall under special collections.
Mm-hmm.
And without exception, different, you know,
Yep.
bursars and so on, without exception, everyone has been supportive of what we have been doing. Of course, we have also delivered.
Yes.
We have delivered.
It's a beautiful and brilliant collection.
Well, but it's much more than that.
Yeah.
We are not just the library and archives. We do an essay competition every few years.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. That's my fax machine.
Okay.
We do an essay competition every few years
Mm-hmm.
in 178 schools in the English-speaking Caribbean. We have a Cape History Prize for Cape students throughout the Caribbean. We also do conferences and help. I am completely certain that were it not for the work of the EWMC, and I'm just not talking about the library and archives situated and the museums situated in Trinidad and Tobago, were it not for the work, the real work of the EWMC, Capitalism and Slavery would not be published today in Turkish and Korean.
Right.
I'm convinced of that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It keeps everything going. It keeps it alive. It makes it a living thing.
This is it. We have a community service project called the Anti-Teen Pregnancy Program, called the Baby Think It Over program, where schools use computerized dolls who teachers can, you have to burp it, you have to change the diaper. It can, the computer can tell the teacher if it's shaking baby syndrome, if you have if you have abused the child, quote unquote. We are involved in all of those things.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
All of those things. We have an annual lectureship at Florida International University. We're in our 20th year.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot of things. It's as you said, it's not like the Samuel Selvon collection that the university has, and
Mm-hmm.
people come in there and do research on Samuel Selvon, and that's it. We are a living collection.
That's right. Now, you had mentioned to me earlier that, about your regret about the lack of communication with your father while he was alive. What would be the one thing you would have liked to have asked him more than anything else?
Oh, God. What was the lack of communication on his side? We fell out, like many families do.
Yeah.
Parents, children. I mean, we're all in imperfect families.
That's right.
Every family is dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What would be the thing? Oh, my God, there have been so many things over the years.
I could imagine.
So many things over the years. I don't know what I would have. You mean something personal, or so what? What do you mean?
Anything.
I have no idea.
Yeah, because you mentioned that the lack of communication was something that you.
Well, you asked me about what was the main thing in my life that I regret, and I think that was one of them.
Yes. So I was just wondering if there's a particular question more than anything else you would have liked.
Well, I would
ask.
certainly love to have had him here during this political time in the United States, and to see my passion for politics, which came for him. It's in the wrong country.
Right.
I've lived here 45 years.
Yes.
My daughter's grown up here, socialized here, educated here. My granddaughter is as well. I've lived with my husband 40 years here. So, I love to have him here now to see what passes for politics. Yeah. Politricks, I should say, with an R. Politricks in the country in which I live. And I would love to have him see my activism.
Yeah. I could imagine he would.
Girls in my office always tell me, we're going to see you on TV, in arrest.
So what would you recommend to a young person listening to this podcast about their relationship to their parents while alive and about the example set by your father?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm answering this, but what I would suggest to every single young person, get involved in something bigger than you.
Right.
Always.
Absolutely.
Always.
Excellent.
You will have a long, healthy, and fulfilled life, but it's got to be more than just you.
That's right.
Whatever that is. Got to be more than just you. Get in something. And I always think that my father's job was to create history, and mine is to preserve it.
Great.
So
that's great. Great stuff. In closing, so please tell us your plans for the Eric Williams Memorial Collection in 2019 and beyond.
Well, as I said, we hope to move to the Central Library, the old Central Library, which was built in 1901. So it certainly fulfills my idea of preservation.
So this year you plan to do that?
Well, hopefully, either this year or next year. We hope.
Mm-hmm.
And we hope to be able to attract the funds to make it into a world-class, state-of-the-art facility, which we don't really have in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, I understand cultural philanthropy is pretty dead in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, I don't know if, in order for it to be dead, it must have been alive.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not sure it ever was.
That's right.
I mean, people will give to, the homelessness and the children, orphans, street people, and
public institutions.
You understand all of that, definitely.
Yeah.
And you must have people before that sort of thing.
Yes.
Like one of the criticisms they had of EW was when he built the Caroni Racing Complex, he said horses before houses.
Yes.
Right. So I get that. But at the same time, man can't live by bread alone.
That's correct. That is correct.
So once you have provided, well, I'm not sure if it is provided, but we could argue about that. But once you've provided the basic necessities of life for a people, which would be health, first. I've often thought about this. Health first, because if you don't have health, you can't be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Education next, because if you don't have education, likely you're going to be a criminal or homeless. Crime next, because crime and drugs, you've got to arrest that and arrest those psychological problems in the society.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've provided the basic necessities, yeah, and crime is, well, actually, I think crime has to be first, because if you're dead, you can't have health. So crime is first. Crime is first.
What I would say is that those three things obviously are important, but I don't think we can separate them. Yeah, but for all of these things, you see, these public buildings and public institutions and public work.
The soul.
Exactly. You've taken the words out of my mouth.
That's what I'm saying. Once you've provided those basic necessities.
But what I want to say is that you have to do it at the same time, because nurturing your soul gives you health.
Yes,
nurturing your soul gives you the ambition to get a good education.
Yes.
When you can dream of going to the moon.
Yes.
When you can dream of these, that these are realizable goals,
mm-hmm.
Then you won't, you may not look for a life of crime, but you may look for something else instead, right? I mean,
but I am struck in Trinidad and Tobago by how many problems, some of them are intractable, it is true. But I am struck by how many problems are small and can be solved.
That's right.
Solvable. I am struck by that.
Yes.
Solvable.
I totally agree. I don't think there are any unsolvable problems in Trinidad and Tobago, to be honest.
There's some, no, maybe
some
not.
Some are more difficult than others, of course.
Intractable, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yes.
But I agree with you. So I hope that we can, as you said in closing, I hope that somehow the EWMC, by some miracle, either we win the lottery or something, I don't know, that we can, have enough funding to be able to, and this is not, by the way, the funding, this is also to train library personnel and other people that we may wish to employ on conservancy, preservation of the history. This is the EW also said that this is your birds, and independence, your history, your flag.
That's right. That was his
speech. There you go.
Well, I want to thank you, Erica, for your work in keeping the memory, the work, and the legacy of your father and the country and region alive. I mean, he was a great man, and I've publicly called him the greatest Trinidadian. And he was a great mind whom the world needs to know more about, and whom we in Trinidad and Tobago need to remember and preserve his legacy. I want to thank you for all you're doing, and may God bless you and your work going forward. Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity, which is, when you told me 60-minute interview, I thought, oh my God, this man is mad. What are we going to find about to talk about for 60 minutes? Well, we've gone over 60 minutes. And I didn't ask even half the questions I wanted to ask. I know. Well, I should have known, because, breadfruit don't bear shatter. So my father talks a lot and I talk a lot. It's interesting. Well, just one little aside in closing. Years and years ago, my daughter's now 32. She was asked in elementary school, what does your father do and what does your mother do? Well, she said her father played golf. And she said, my mother talks on the phone. So there you go. That's great. Well, right, that's all. Well, thank you so much again. Yes, and thank you for being here. I appreciate it. That's all for Independent Thought and Freedom this week. Please join us again next week. And in the meanwhile, make sure you subscribe, leave me a rating, like, and share this podcast with your friends. Thanks, and bye for now.